Hey Optimancers, Treantmonk here. So now we're getting into our final part of our guide to wizards. We have talked about all the subclasses of wizard, what races you might want to play. We've talked about what magic items you might want to get, what feats you might want to get. We've talked about tactics at low levels, mid levels, high levels, and we've talked about 9 levels of spells. So we have all the information now to make our builds. So what I'm going to be doing over the next several weeks is I'm going to be doing one build for every subclass of wizard. Now I had a lot of decisions to make here. The first decision was, how would I handle spell selection? Because, of course, with a wizard, we get a number of first level spells at first level, and then each level after that, we can select 2 spells. But with a wizard, of course, if we get spell scrolls or we get other spell books, we can add them to our spells in our spell book, and then we can change our preparation so we're not limited to just necessarily the ones we received with our level ups. But in some campaigns some campaigns you don't get any scrolls, some campaigns you don't find any opposing spellbooks, or you don't have the time or the ability to copy those spells. I'm in a campaign right now where we have gotten spellbooks, but there's just no way that the wizard in the party is going to have the opportunity to copy those spells into his own spellbook. So what I'm going to do, I've decided, is I'm going to take a worst case scenario here, and I'm only going to deal with the spells that we would normally get with a wizard through our level 1 initial picks and then the 2 per level. So when I'm dealing with preparations and that kind of thing, it will be based on spells only that I received with level ups. We've talked about tactics, we've talked about the spells. If you are playing one of these builds and you get additional spells in your spell book, you should already have some baselines on whether you want to switch your preparation to those spells. The second thing I had to decide was what level I was going to take this to. Do I want every build to go to level 20, or do I want to maybe alter it based on the subclass and the type of build? And I've decided I'm going to take every build to level 20. That doesn't mean you need to watch the video to level 20. If you're playing in a campaign and you're going to be playing to level 8, I don't necessarily expect you to stick around to level 20. And be aware that when I do these optimal builds, I'm always thinking that we're starting at level 1, and I want this character to be playable right from level 1. So I'm never one of these optimizers that look at the final build and then everything else is just building to that. I'm looking for something that is fun and playable and effective right from the moment we start to play and moving up from there. The next thing I had to decide is what races am I going to play. Am I going to play a lot of variant humans and a lot of high elves? No, I've decided what I'm going to do. I did a race video where I talked about which races work really well for wizard, but instead of just limiting myself to those races, I'm going to make every subclass a different race. I want to show you how some of the races that you wouldn't necessarily associate with wizard can work really well with these subclasses. So I will be doing 10 different races for the 10 different subclasses. The next thing I had to decide was I going to make 20 straight wizards, as in 20 levels of wizard, and I've decided I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is some of the builds will be 20 levels of wizard, and some will be doing a little bit of multi-classing, just so that we have some differences in the styles of wizard. I don't want to create 10 different god wizards that have minor differences. That would be boring for me. I think it would be boring for you too. So I'm going to create some straight god wizards. I'm going to do some level dipping in other classes for some of those god wizards, for some other styles of wizard as well. So we are going to have 10 builds that are all going to be primarily wizard. We're talking every single one will be able to access 9th level spells. Okay, but some of them will not necessarily have 20 levels of wizard. And I wanted to change the styles of wizard. I don't want 10 god wizards. Some of them are more based on melee. Some are more based on blasting. So I've got some god wizards. I've got some melee wizards. I've got some blasting wizards. And I've got some that kind of mix those things up. The next thing I had to decide was ability scores. Am I going to do standard array, or am I going to do point buy? As usual, I'm not going to do random die rolls because there's just so many options, so many variations of that. There's no way for us to handle that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to mix up point buy and standard array, because Generally, point buy is a little bit better than standard array, because standard array, I mean, you can do a standard array with a point buy, but you can't do a point buy with a standard array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it up, because some people are limited to standard array, so I'm going to give them some options to look at, and then those who have point buy, you can apply that to standard array as well. So today's video, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview on all 10 builds. So let's get started. So next week, we're going to be doing the Bladesinger. This has been my most requested subclass of Wizard to do, so I'm going to do it first. Now, with Bladesinger, it is really tempting to multiclass because Bladesinger, of course, has a little more melee capability than most other wizards do. So the idea would be, if we multiclass that, we can push that melee capability, and then we can get a real spell sword kind of feel to it, or a gish. But what I've decided to do, maybe because of that, is I'm going to do the Bladesinger as straight wizard, 20 levels of wizard with the Bladesinger. And what we end up with then is a character that kind of mixes the melee wizard and the god wizard. So this is a melee god wizard cross, and I'm calling it the Blade Arcana. I'm going to be doing this build as a high elf because with a Bladesinger we're limited in race anyway. So this is the perfect place to put our high elf. So next week, 20 level Bladesinger build, high elf, the Blade Arcana. The following week I'm going to be doing a build on what is probably the most well-known of the subclasses and probably the favorite of the subclasses in general, and that is the Diviner. Now I'm going to be basing this a little bit on a build I've already done. I've been playing a character in a campaign for over a year now that has a 1-level Knowledge Cleric dip, and then is a Diviner Wizard after that. So this build will be 1-level Knowledge Cleric and then 19 levels of Diviner Wizard. This is a God Wizard. We're going to be really focusing on our battlefield controls and our debuffs, and to some extent our buffs, though it's mainly about battlefield control and debuffing. With the Diviner, of course, we have that portent, and that affects our debuffing to some degree as well. There's spells that I don't like as much for wizards, especially, you know, the ones that target a single enemy and then they get a saving throw, and if they make that saving throw nothing happens. Of course, with a Diviner we can often choose for them to fail that saving throw before they ever roll. So for that reason, we're going to focus a little bit more on those kind of spells with this particular build. With this build, I will be doing a Variant Human. What we're going to find with the Variant Human is it's front-loaded. So at first level, Variant Human is a great choice. And it is going to have that additional feat that's really going to help us out until all the other races catch up. Because eventually all the other races will be able to get the feats they need and get their intelligence to 20. And then they've caught up to the Variant Human. And then all their racial bonuses are just extra. So those races tend to do better at high levels. So we're going to pick the Variant Human because for characters that are going to be playing lower level campaigns, Variant Human is a really tempting selection. So I think one of my wizards should do it, and I've thought that this is probably the right wizard to do that build with. So because we're going Knowledge Cleric and Diviner, we've definitely got a theme going here. So I'm calling this build the Auger. This is the build that is about knowledge. So we're going to get expertise in a couple knowledges through Knowledge Cleric and the ability to boost those more with the guidance spell. And then we're going to get bonuses to divination spells through Diviner. So this is the character if you really want to focus on that theme. On our third week, we're going to be going into the Enchanter. The Enchanter, of course, is one of my favorite subclasses for Wizard, and I've often called them an underrated subclass because I think their abilities are really powerful and useful. So this build, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a Yuan Ti. I think thematically, this is the right one for a Yuan Ti. So we're going to be calling this one the Beguiler, and we are going to be focusing on enchantment spells because, of course, they get boosts with enchantment wizards. So what we're going to find is some of the spells that I would normally just take without even thinking at certain levels, I'm going to be taking enchantment spells that I'd normally stay away from because we have the ability to twin those spells for free. So it makes a lot of sense for us to take those spells with this build. So I'm going to show you how that's going to alter my spell selection, and then thematically, this is a character that's really about beguiling the enemy. So the focus here is, it's still a God Wizard, but we're going to focus a lot more on our personal defense because we're going to have to get a lot closer and debuffing or enchanting the enemies. The following week, we're going to blow stuff up. So we're going to be doing our Evoker build. And our Evoker build, I'm calling the Elementalist because we're going to be doing all different kinds of damage types with our blasts. With this one, we're going with the Forest Gnome. I think for World of Warcraft players, mixing the blasting with Gnome aspect makes sense. And Gnome was going to go in here somewhere. I like the idea of a blasting Gnome. So we're going to go Forest, Gnome 20, and this is a blasting build. Evoker 20 levels. The following week, we're going to be doing our Conjurer. And with our Conjurer, there's going to be a little bit, if you watched my video on the Circle of the Shepherd Druid, you're going to see a little bit of overlap there because we are following a similar path with this wizard. And that is, we're going to play a Goblin, and it is going to focus largely on summoning and battlefield controls, because those are really the obvious choices for a Conjurer. But of course, unlike a Druid, we're going to have much more in the way of maneuverability here because, of course, with Conjuration, we're also talking about teleportation. So this character is going to be more about maneuverability on the battlefield as well as controlling summons and battlefield controls. Should be a fun build. We are going to call this guy the Master of Creation. The following week after that, we're going to do our Illusionist guide. And I thought a lot about how I play this one. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be doing, at some point, we were going to probably throw some Rogue in. And Illusionist seemed to be the right one for that because, of course, illusion spells can often work synergetically with the practices of thieves and that kind of thing. So what I'm calling this one is the ultimate Arcane Trickster. So this is going to be a character that's going to be really good at skills, specifically the rogue type skills. But I'm only going to be dipping Rogue. I'm going to be taking one level of Rogue, and then later on I'll take a second level of Rogue. But for a lot of the career of this character, it's only going to have a single level of Rogue. So instead of using those Rogue abilities like Cunning Action and Evasion and Uncanny Dodge and Sneak Attack in combat, we're going to be using spells instead, specifically focusing on the Illusion School. And I think that that can be more effective. So when I think about an Arcane Trickster, I'm thinking about a rogue that uses spells to achieve its rogue-like pursuits. Arcane Trickster isn't the best way to do that. The best way to do that is with a wizard that's dipped rogue. So I'm going to show you how that works. This is going to be a Kenku because that is going to really solidify the skills we need. So we're going to have lots of skills. They have that mimicry ability. I think it is thematically a good choice as well. So our Arcane Trickster, a Kenku, it's going to be one level of rogue, a fair bit of wizard, another level of rogue, and then we're going to continue with wizard. So it'll be 18 levels of wizard, 2 levels of rogue by the time we finish. Then I wanted to make a wizard that is actually going to focus more on melee. And ironically, it's not going to be the Bladesinger. It's going to be the Warmage. So with the Warmage, I'm going to make a build I'm calling the Battlemage. And this build is going to be good at melee as well as having pretty good spellcasting ability as well. But we're going to dip a little further with this one. We're going to go 3 levels of fighter and then 17 levels of wizard. Now with those fighter levels, I'm not going to do Eldritch Knight. I'm already an Eldritch Knight. I'm already going to have all kinds of spellcasting abilities. So I'm going to be doing Battlemaster instead. And I think that those maneuvers are going to complement this character very well. And we're going to be using a Githyanki here. A Githyanki is a good choice because we're getting that strength boost along with the intelligence boost. And thematically, I think it's appropriate too. Githyanki are often that mix of the psychic magical powers along with the melee capabilities. So our Warmage is going to end up being a Battlemage. And of course, I wanted to have fighter with one of these as well because I want to show you how Action Surge works really nicely with spell casting. This is not new information to most people. Action Surge, of course, gives you an additional action on your turn, and there's a lot of misinformation out there that you can't cast 2 spells on your turn unless one's a cantrip, but that restriction only applies if one of those spells is a bonus action spell. if you cast a bonus action spell on your round, any other spells you cast must be cantrips. But if you cast 2 full action spells on your round, there is no such restriction. And we're going to follow melee with melee. And I'm going to build the next week, we're going to be doing our Abjurer build. And with an Abjurer, it seems pretty obvious to me to make a character that's really hard to kill. Because that, of course, fits with the Abjuration style. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a build I called Armadillo. And this is going to be a Hobgoblin Abjurer Wizard. And we're going to take a little bit of Warlock in there as well. And I'm going to show you how Warlock and Abjurer work. Of course, people who have used Warlock and Wizard in the past know that if you take 2 levels of Warlock, you can take an invocation called Armor of Shadows. That Armor of Shadows gives you Mage Armor, so you just recast your Mage Armor over and over again to boost up your Arcane Ward. Now, personally, I consider that to be a loophole. And when I optimize, I try not to take advantage of loopholes, even if they're legal in the rules. So I just want to say right away, if you take 2 levels of Warlock and you do the Armor of Shadows, you're going to be able to recharge your Arcane Ward without expending any spell slots. So you can have it up full between every battle. But your DM may or may not like that because you are exploiting a loophole. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm only going to be doing 1 level of Warlock and then 19 levels of Wizard. And the reason why I would do that is, number 1, we're going to be able to get our medium armor proficiency and our shield proficiency right away. And number 2, it's going to give us access to Armor of Agathis. And with Armor of Agathis, we are going to be able to use an Abjuration spell that scales well to not only recharge our ward, but also give us those temporary hit points in addition. So when we cast it, especially if we cast it during a battle, we're basically doubling our effect. So that is why I'm going to be dipping Warlock, but I'm not going to be exploiting the loophole of Armor of Shadows. But be aware, it is out there, and if you play in a group where that is cool, right? Where your DM has no problem with it, the other players have no problem with it, then I will say, if you were to take 2 levels of Warlock and grab Armor of Shadows, you can use that with Abjurer to recharge your Arcane Ward. Now this character will be able to go into melee because it's going to have a pretty good armor class and it's going to have strong defensive ability. Offensively, it's not going to be huge. So we're still probably going to be focusing on the spells we can use with this character. So I would think of it more as a god wizard, but it would be able to go into melee without the fear that most wizards would have. The following week, we're going to be doing our Necromancer guide, and I'm going to call this guy the Grave Mage, obviously. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be using a Kobold, just to show you how we can use races that you wouldn't necessarily associate with Wizard. So we're going to be using a Kobold for a 20 level Necromancer, straight Necromancer build, because we're going to want to access those Animate Dead spells as soon as we can. This character, of course, is going to focus on those kind of spells. So we're going to be building our undead army with this character. So our Kobold with his undead army should be a lot of fun. The final week, I'll be doing my Transmuter guide. And one thing that I've been asked over the years, actually, is how effective is it if you want to play a wizard that maybe doesn't do damage at all, right? They don't have a single spell that can do a point of damage. Is that even workable? And I think it is, and so we're going to do that build together, and I think Transmuter is perfect for that, because of course, when we're not doing spells that do damage, we're going to be using our concentration more. That concentration is going to be even more important, and with Transmuter, of course, we can boost our Constitution saving throws. Now, also because these kinds of wizards are going to be concentrating a lot and we want to make those concentration rolls, I think Halfling is the perfect choice here. So our Pacifist Wizard, we're going to call it the Pacifist Wizard, even though we're going to be aiding our allies and killing our enemies, but we're not going to do any damage at all ourselves. This is the most pure god wizard build I guess we could have. So we're going to be doing a Stout Halfling, 20 levels Transmuter, and this character will not be able to do damage at all. And I think it's still going to be very effective. So I hope you'll join me for that. Will be the finale of this series. And once that's done, what happens next? Am I going to go into another class? Not right away. I'm going to want to do some videos talking about some other things. Pathfinder 2 is out. I'm going to want to talk about that a little bit. I don't think I'm going to stop doing 5th edition videos just because I love 5th edition. It's what I'm playing most right now. I think it's really accessible to new players. So I'm going to continue doing 5th edition videos, but I'm going to start doing some Pathfinder 2 videos as well, because I'm going to want to talk about that, because I'm excited about that new system. I came through Pathfinder to 5th edition, so going back into Pathfinder should be a lot of fun. The other thing is there's more additional videos about 5th edition that I haven't been able to do just because of time constraints, and I felt obligated to do the Wizard videos. So I want to talk about those other things. Once they're out of the way, maybe then we'll look at another class and do a similar thing to what we did with Wizards, though I don't think it's going to be as long. I'm always going to have more to say about Wizards than any other class. Join me for the Blade Arcana next week. Until then, I'm going to sit back and relax, and I'm going to have some fun, because D&D is for everyone. Thanks, Optimancers. See you next week.